Good day, Sun Lakes. Hi, I'm Brian Garlington, Director of Golf here, and welcome to Sports Corner and Tips from the Pros. Today we're actually out here on number 7 of the championship course, and I actually have a question for you. Do you know how many greens the average tour player hits? You're probably thinking it's quite high. Actually, it's not. It's only between 11 and 12 greens around. So 6 to 7 greens are actually scrambling to make par. And they always seem to make the right choices because they get up and down quite often. Well, here today we have 3 different types of shots, and I have a rule of thumb of when you would hit a chip or a pitch or putt it. So again, we're out here and I have the 3 different shots. This first shot here, we're just off the green and we're actually in the short grass. And this is my first rule of thumb is, if you can putt it, putt it. So I would putt this 100% of the time. The second shot that I have over here is actually a little farther off the green. We're actually in a little bit longer cut of grass. And my second rule of thumb is if you can't putt it, chip it. And the reason we would want to chip this is because if we wanted to putt this ball, it's going to actually get caught up by this longer grass. Then you have shorter grass and even shorter still, and it's really hard to get a gauge of how fast this is going to come out and everything. So what I want to do is I actually want to chip this ball, get it onto the putting surface, and let it run down to the hole. So again, if you can't putt it, chip it. This shot will fly very low to the ground and will run farther than it flies. Now my third rule of thumb is if you can see there's a ball just beyond the bunker here. And my third rule of thumb is if you can't putt it, if you can't chip it, we're going to pitch it. Now a pitch is, if you just picture in your mind, the pitch flies up in the hand or you're going to pitch something in the air. That's exactly what we want to do with that third shot. We want to make sure we carry the bunker, land it soft on the green, and let it roll down to the hole. If we were going to chip that, if we chipped it, we would probably chip it right into the bunker. So that's my rule of thumb. If you can't putt it, chip it. If you can't chip it, pitch it. So now that we know where to hit each of the shots, the putt, the chip, and the pitch, we won't talk about the putt right now, but what I do want to talk about is the chip and how we set up for the chip. We want to be as consistent as we can. So there's a couple of ways or a couple of things that I want you to remember when chipping. First of all, let's go ahead and get a narrow stance. Okay, we don't need to have a wide stance like we're hitting a full shot because we're actually not using a lot of our lower body. So we want our stance nice and close. We also want to get out a little closer to the golf ball. We don't want to be reaching out. We want to get out over the golf ball, so we want a narrow stance. We can choke down on the club a little bit to get a little closer. The shorter we make the club, the more control we're going to have over it, so I'd like to get down closer to the bottom of the grip. So a narrow stance, we're going to choke up a little bit. The third thing is I want to get the ball position off of our back foot or in the back part of our stance. What this is going to do is this is going to enable the club to make contact with the ball first. I see so many amateurs get that ball position too far forward that they actually are trying to help this ball up into the air, and when they do that, what happens is they either chunk behind it because they're trying to get under the ball, or if they don't do that, they scull the ball and the ball runs over on the other side, off the other side of the green, and then they're chipping again and wasting shots. So the reason we put it back in our stance is we want to ensure that the club hits the ball before the grass. We also want to take our weight and lean it toward the target. This will also ensure that the club is actually working its way down and contacting the ball first before the grass. And the last thing is I want to make sure you get those hands set nice and forward, extremely forward of the ball position. That's going to take the loft off the club so that the ball will fly low and roll most of the way. And the last thing is we want to actually, when we're making the stroke, we want to feel the stroke as though we were a pendulum on a grandfather clock. That never changes pace. It's always tick, tock, like a metronome. Back and forth at the same pace. We don't want to change our speeds. That leads to inconsistency. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate one here for you. I'm going to go ahead and get my stance nice and narrow. The ball position is off the back of my, off the instep of my right, or my trailing foot. My weight is leaning a little forward. My hands are set forward, and when I go back and forth, I'm going to try to maintain the same pace back and forth. So here we go. So that's a very delicate chip. I'm going to try another one. It's because it's working itself downhill, so I don't want to get a lot on this. So we're going to go back and through, just like a putting stroke. Thank you, and this was Tips from the Pros.